Hey hosers, James Griffin here. And I'm doing I was going to do a more in-depth video on this philosophy. But I'm not, because my concern isn't the actual philosophy. Um, my concern is the use of the philosophy and the, um, and I'm not even really going to go over the arguments. I'm going to tell you to to go over the arguments yourselves. I'm going to show you where to go over the arguments. But I want you to understand why your arguments are bad, and it has nothing to do with the actual um, arguments themselves. So this is to Godless Engineer and to Aron and to everybody else who is saying that atheism is a lack of belief and not a belief. Now to start, I am a like what I would personally define as a hard atheist. I have always been a hard atheist, and all of that. I am in the strong disbelief category. Um, Actively strong disbelief and passively strong disbelief to the proposition that God exists. Um, uh, I believe I always will be, although my mind is open to being changed. Now, I was, however, up till a couple of months ago, in this category of yeah, this is good enough for atheism. Um, and then by Steve McRae and Ozymandias Ramses II and a few others having discussions on it, I have been swayed to this is not even this is not even descript. Well, it is descriptive of an atheist, but it is also descriptive of a lot of agnostics. Um, excuse me, and maybe I'll get over that. Maybe I'll go over that in a minute. Um, but I will just quickly go over the way that we should be using. Well, I won't go over that yet. See, what we're doing is this is perfectly fine as just a quick and dirty description to be used in general by the laity when in common conversation, right? This is like saying that um, I have a theory that G-Man is a Poe, and doesn't believe any of the shit he's saying, and he's doing it just to troll everybody, and that's my theory. Now that meaning of theory is to say that I is a synonym to say that I have a hypothesis, right? Abstract thought, speculation. That's the meaning of theory I'm using. Now, we all know the favorite creationist trick to try to say that, say, the um, theory of evolution, which is a plausible or scientifically acceptable general principle or body of principles offered to explain phenomena, like the insert theory of evolution there, they are trying to conflate or to confuse it with I'm not sure what the fallacy is called. I know it's a red herring. They're probably an equivocation. No, not equivocation fallacy. I'm not up to snuff on my fallacies. But it is a red herring fallacy. I know what type of fallacy it is. Or category. They're trying to say that because it's called the theory of evolution, it's an abstract thought. Well, or speculation. It's a guess. That's what you're doing. Stop it. Seriously. Um, when you're in a discussion about whether or not God exists, you must be using this one. Just like when you're talking about, I don't want to go there yet. I don't want to go there at all. Just like when you're talking about the theory of evolution, you must be talking about it. You must be using the word theory like this. You cannot be using it like this. Oh, here's the hypothesis one. Well, let's assume for the sake of argument or investigation. Here we go. 3B. An unproven assumption. That's how they're using it. Um, And that's how I'm using it when I say that G-Man is a Poe, and doesn't believe any of the shit he's saying. Uh, so you're being dishonest, and so I was in this camp up until a few months ago, well, maybe 2 months ago at most, when I was watching a hangout where this was being discussed on Steve McRae's channel, and um, I was swayed. You know, I sound like I sound like someone who was a Christian, or not not just a Christian, but like a young Earth creationist who was, at least to myself, I sound like a young Earth creationist who was shown that he was wrong about his young Earth creationism. And it's now like a hard line, you know, 100% knowledge that God does not exist. Atheist now. Um, so I feel that other members of the atheist community are being as dishonest as people like Kent Hovind and Ray Comfort and Ken Him when they're doing their little dance over here, and that's why I'm making this, and that's why I care. Um, and these are people who keep saying if I'm wrong, uh, I will change my position. You know, these are people who have pretty much said, if God exists and can be proven to me, I will change my position on God. But they won't. But I'm. They've been shown why this is wrong, and in the way they're using it, because they're using it when they should be using this. Again, if you call yourself an atheist and you're not discussing the existence of God, this is just fine. This is just fine. If you're discussing the existence of God, you have to use this one. Just like if you're discussing the validity of the theory of evolution, you have to use this one. You can't use this one, right? Or this one. I've been saying that one, but it's actually that one. I just am shit and just skimmed it, looking for the one I needed. Either of them work, but they're saying that one. See, I'm crap. I'm new at this. I just make video game uh, videos. Oh, I'm apparently crap at using my mouse as well. So, um, you know, and I will explain a little bit, just because there are some people who aren't listening and don't understand it. So if I have your attention now, that you're willing to stop being dishonest, I will explain it to you, even though it's been explained by people who know more about this, and given much better explanations. Atheism is typically defined. By the way, this is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. This is peer reviewed, okay? This is the same as, you know, um, I'm not up to snuff. Nature, or some other highly touted scientific journal. This is equivalent, okay? This is like if we were arguing about evolution, and I was wrong on something on evolution, and I wasn't uh, changing my opinion on it, and you said, well, here's a peer-reviewed paper, go read it, and it'll tell you why you're wrong and why I'm right. Well, here's a peer-reviewed paper. It's going to tell you why I'm right and you're wrong. And if you say, oh, well, you're trying to force your definition of it into the use, I have a word for you. It's hypocrite. You're being hypocritical. You're being no better than Ken Ham. No better. So, definition of atheism. Atheism is typically defined in terms of theism, which is best understood as the proposition, which is something that is either true or false. It is often defined as the belief that God exists, but here belief means something believed. It refers to the propositional content of belief, not to the attitude or psychological state of believing. This is why it makes sense to say that theism is true or false and to argue for and against theism. If, however, atheism is defined in terms of theism, and theism is the proposition that God exists, and not the psychological condition of believing that there is a God, then it follows that atheism is not the absence of the psychological condition of believing God exists. More on that below. The A in atheism, this is important to everybody who uses this etymological fallacy. The A in atheism must, I want to repeat that, must be understood as the negation instead of absence, as not instead of without. This is where you go for your definition on this kind of thing. Therefore, in philosophy, at least, atheism should be construed as the proposition that God does not exist. Or more broadly, the proposition that there are no gods. Personally, the one I've heard that the best is that theism is the belief that at least one God exists. But every time I think of this, it cracks me up. I guess you can have no God. I guess you can have exactly 0 gods existing, having one positive God and one negative God. I'm sorry, that cracks me up every time I think about it. This definition has the added virtue, and this is why when you're talking about the existence of God, you really do need to use this definition and not simply a lack of belief in God. Now, if you're just going around saying, I'm an atheist, I lack a belief in God, that's fine. But if you're talking about the existence of God, this is what you need to be using. This, right here, is what you need to be using. The definition has the added virtue of making atheism a direct answer to one of the most important metaphysical questions in the philosophy of religion, namely, is there a God? There are only 2 possible direct answers to the question. Yes, which is theism, and no, which is atheism. Answers like I don't know, and no one knows, which is agnosticism. I don't care, which is, I guess you could say it's agnosticism. I like the term apatheism. I don't know if that's a proper term or not, but it works for me. An affirmative answer has never been established. There's a very intelligent agnostic, or the question is meaningless, which I kind of like. I wish I could hold that position reasonably, but I can't. So that is a theistic non-cognitive. These are not direct answers to the question. When identifying atheism with the metaphysical claim that there is no God, this is particularly useful for doing philosophy, which is the discussion of whether or not God exists. Well, that's a philosophical thing. Even if you're arguing the evidence, the question, does God exist, is philosophical. And you would do well to use philosophy to discover the answer to this question. Of course, you have to use science to justify your answer to the question, but you have to use philosophy to answer the question. They go hand in hand. You people are making me. I guess they're called lack-theists. But you guys who are holding this, I hate philosophy. You're making me a philosopher, just like Ken Ham made Pelagia made Pelagia an atheist. Aron Ra, you are making me a philosopher. I never thought I would have been doing something like this. Even a month ago, even a few weeks ago. Anyways, while identifying blah 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 blah, it has more than one related useful for doing philosophy. It's important to recognize the term atheism has more than one use. Yes, it does. It can be used as a general blanket term, but when you're using philosophy, you should use the philosophical meaning of it. If you're just trying to if you're just trying to loosely define someone, the other one is fine. You don't necessarily always need to go, you know, this deep. Uh, you can go this deep. You only need to go as deep as you want. Not as deep as you want, as deep as you need to. But if you're this deep in, you'd better be using the right language. You'd better be using the right definitions. Um, and if you're talking about the existence of God, this is not the right definition. Just like if you're talking about the existence of evolution, this is not the right definition, and that's why I'm so riled up. Um, blah blah blah. Now I lost my place. They're not direct answers when identifying atheism. Uh, yeah. Um, that is. I had most of this mapped out in red. Here's the one other very important one I wanted to discuss. I've had this argument thrown at me. Um, this is what said see below. Uh, Departing even more radically from the Norman philosophy, a few philosophers and quite a few non-philosophers claim that atheism or not claim, but we should say assert that atheism shouldn't be defined as a proposition at all, um, even if theism is a proposition. Instead, atheism should be defined as a psychological state, the state of not believing in the existence of at least one God. This view was famously proposed by the philosopher Anthony Flew and arguably played a role in his 1972 defense of a alleged presumption of atheism. The editors of the Oxford Handbook of Atheism, Bilivant and Roos, also favor this definition, and one of them, Stéphane Bilivant, I'm Canadian, so I can do the French thing a bit, but je ne parle pas bien français. Defends it on the grounds of scholarly utility. His argument is that this definition can best serve as an umbrella term for a variety of positions that have been identified with atheism. Scholars can then use adjectives like strong and weak to develop a taxonomy that differentiates very specific forms of atheism. Unfortunately, this argument overlooks the fact that if atheism is defined as a psychological state, then no proposition can count as a form of atheism, because a proposition is not a psychological state. This undermines his argument in defense of Flew's definition, for it implies that what he calls strong atheism, the proposition or belief in the sense of something believed, that there is no God, is not a variety of atheism. In short, his proposed umbrella term leaves strong atheism out in the rain. So he literally pwned himself. He literally destroyed his own argument with his own argument. Yeah. Like, yeah. That's what I want. That should be addressing to all of the just to a lot of what has been told to me. Okay, this is like philosophy 101 here. At least where it's pointing towards theism. And if you can go and look it up and read the whole thing yourself. And you know what? If you want to argue with me, then if you want to argue with me that it shouldn't be, I've shown you where to look for the philosophical tools to defeat the arguments I'm using properly. Okay, this is like handing This is like going into the peer review and handing someone a a paper that refutes your argument. Well, not necessarily one that refutes your argument, but one that takes the opposite position of your argument in a scientific theory. Um, so that's what I wanted to say. And, I have had some people, because I made I knew I wasn't going to keep this before I was halfway done, and apparently there were some audio issues anyways. But, this Brian dude I had a chat with on the video, because I was asking for help on it. And he says, if someone holds no belief that there is a God, um, or they're not being a god, what would you call them? And I said an agnostic. And that is a valid term, because Gnosticism means having knowledge. Someone who is agnostic claims to have no knowledge. Yes, exactly. But a lack of belief has nothing to do with a belief or a lack of belief has nothing to do with knowledge. Just think about that for a second. What does this have to do with a belief or a lack of belief that God exists? Nothing. What does this have to do with a... But there are a lot of philosophers, or not philosophers, there are a lot of agnostics who do not believe that God exists. They are just, or they lack a belief that God exists, but they're not certain enough that God does not exist, that they want to say that they're an atheist. By your definition, or mine. And that's fine. But this does represent, many agnostics. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, stop. This represents a lot of agnostics. The opposite represents a lot of agnostics, right? This here, what he said there, if we're going to pull up the Dawkins scale, which he's for which he is referencing, and I don't like this scale. I really don't like this scale, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. What he said, lacking a belief in God, I strongly believe, leaning, it could be any of these three, okay? Any of these three, right? These are all explained by this statement. However, right, these this go away. Okay, I do not like this. No, I don't want to report comment. Why is report comment the top one? Why isn't like view this dude's activity the top one? I just want to highlight it. This describes it, a lot of agnostics. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to show them. An agnostic, but they could be an atheist or a theistic non-cognitive as well, because they all many atheists or many agnostics lack a belief in God, and all atheists lack a belief in God. And because you can't have you can't have not without. You can't have without is prerequisite for not. But and atheism is not without. But you have to have without. So it is both not and without. I understand that. But an agnostic, because and I'm saying an agnostic because they're just saying they don't have a belief in God. They're not saying they don't have an active disbelief of God, right? These are all agnostic positions. I don't know. I'm very uncertain. Um, I don't like how this is. I don't like how this is said. I don't know. I don't know. These are all agnosticism. Every one of them. The only two on this spectrum that are not is strong theist and strong atheist. And strong atheist, by the lack theist definition, is I know it's not it's not a it's not even an atheist, which I just think is hilarious. Um, so that's why you're wrong, because you're not telling me explicitly that you don't know that there is a God, or that you know that there is not a God. You're telling me that you're telling me that you just don't have a belief. It describes a lot of things. And a theistic non-cognitive means that they don't understand the proposition that of there is a God, which so I explained it to him here. I also ran into this other dude, Godless, Barrett, on the actual video. First off, dude, I say this in my reply, but you are typing like those people that Godless Engineer make fun of. Seriously. I can hear Godless Engineer reading in his hyper exaggerated voice, reading your comment. It's terrible. First off, you're saying you compare a lack of theism, which, yes, there's your dictionary. There's your etymological fallacy to a scientific theory. No, I'm comparing a philosophical theory to a scientific theory. Well, an element of philosophy to a scientific theory, which are generally considered to be on the same level. You basically tell the entire, blah 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 blah. That is a appeal to popularity. Words don't have definition meanings; they have usages. There's another fallacy. You can say they have usages all they want, but you're saying that they don't have definitions. I mean, seriously, come on. I'm an atheist and have no burden of proof. Yes, you don't have a burden of you don't well you do have a burden of proof, but you don't need a burden of proof if you're just saying, oh yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Bye bye. If you're going to actually engage in a discussion about a belief about whether or not God exists, you do have a burden of proof. You do have a burden of justification. But as Hitchens would say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I'll add my own bit to that. Mundane claims require mundane evidence. And their claim is more extraordinary than our claim. That there's an all-powerful being out there that can warp space and time to its will and is all-powerful and everywhere all at once and all that. And our belief that that's not true is mundane. Furthermore, I don't know why you're afraid of having a burden of proof, and I don't know why you're afraid of having a burden of justification. This is a chemistry library. Sterling Chemistry Library at Yale, I guess. This is all proof. This is mostly proof against God, and this is one subject. In a number of subjects: cosmology, physics, geology, evolution. We have many more libraries this size that are our that are our proof, that we use for our burden of justification. They have this, and that's all they use. Now they make things trying to justify this. They make more text trying to justify it, trying to explain it. But really, they have this. This is their proof. This is their proof, And this is many times this. Many times, let's see, many times this. Many times all of this. Well, I guess maybe not all of it, but many times this. This is our burden. This is our proof. This is our justification. We don't need to worry. We have that covered. And that's all we need. People like you will tell me that I have a burden of proof or I'm not an atheist. No, I won't tell you. Well, if you're not going to say that you believe that there are no gods, then I won't call you an atheist, because the definition of an atheist is someone who believes that there are no gods. Which I believe you believe there is no gods. You're just trying to avoid using the term belief because Aron is allergic to it. I want you to stop and think about it. If you watch this, Gob, I want you to stop and think about that. You're allergic to the word belief, or you're doing everything you can to avoid using the word belief because Aron is doing everything he can to avoid using the word belief. I want you to stop and think about that, or Godless Engineer, or anyone else. Really, the American atheists. When you tell the majority of atheists they have the wrong definition, you have the right one. Well, you don't necessarily have the wrong definition. You have the right definition if you're just saying, "Yeah, I'm an atheist." Bye. If you're arguing the proposition that a god, at least one god exists, then you are using the wrong definition. I'm hoping that you understand this. And that's where we are. The last thing I want to cover is that I want to rail on this. Really want to rail on this. I looked at other ones that aren't on like christianevolution.com. Okay, I looked at this one. I looked at Godless Mom. They all say the same thing. But this one is the easiest to see and to read, so I want to use it. I like these. Well, I don't like this. I don't think this is possible, but I'm not going to get into that. I think that it's a yes or no question, and you're going to have a yes or no answer, and that you cannot sit perfectly on 50-50. You will psychologically have one or the other, but the closer to the line, of course, the closer to that 50 line you are, the less it really matters. But you will have a true or false, a 1 or a 0, a yes or a no in there, even if you're not willing to admit it to yourself. But that's like a little bit deeper than this needs to be. So I like this. Okay, I know for sure God exists. I know for certain, but I strongly believe. Okay, so here's a knowledge and a belief statement. I know for sure God exists. Remember, you have to believe something to have knowledge of it. And if you want to tell me that you don't have to believe something to have knowledge in it, then I want you to explain to me. Then I want you to explain that to me. Because if you don't believe the knowledge you have, then is it knowledge? And that's definitely something that I've been helped with by philosophers. And then this one, I like this one. I don't know for certain. There's a knowledge claim, but I strongly believe there's a belief claim. So this really reads, I believe, but I don't know for certain. I'm very uncertain, but I am inclined to believe in God. So there we have another. I believe, but I'm very uncertain. And then this one, whatever. I don't think this is an actual position. I'm non-cognitive of this position. But then we have an entirely different language here, and this is why I really don't like this. leaning towards atheism. I don't know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. It is avoiding applying the same standard of having a knowledge claim and a belief claim that these ones have. This one too. I don't know, but it's improbable. Actually, this is more of a belief claim than that. But still, it's weaseling out of the word. It's weaseling out of using the word belief. It is. You can actually have this with saying that atheism is a belief. Well, you have these three with saying that theism is a belief, but it's been completely removed. These are not equivalent to each other because they don't all have the same components. This has a knowledge claim and a second knowledge claim. This has a knowledge claim and a second knowledge claim. Actually, this has a knowledge claim and a second knowledge claim. This one has a knowledge claim and a verb. That literally means the same as this one. Or it's the action of doing this, not knowing and not maybe giving it some more scrutiny. Actually, this one I think is, I think if you, I think this one actually says more to being de facto atheist than de facto atheist does to being de facto atheist. But that's just me. But these ones, belief, or sorry, knowledge, belief, knowledge, belief, action, sorry, knowledge, action, knowledge, and this literally means that it's pretty much saying what it is. It might just say, I don't know for certain, but I don't know for certain, or I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure I don't know, or I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure no. So it's a double standard. It's terrible. It is completely biased towards getting out of the belief statement. So now I understand why people don't like this. I mean, if you want to try to tell me I'm wrong, do so. But yeah, I really don't like this, and that's why. And the more I look at this, the more I don't like it. I mean, it's useful for just a quick. It's useful for the laity, just for a quick and dirty. Yeah, I'm here, whatever. I've always been here. But yeah, I mean, it's dishonest, and we shouldn't be using it in serious philosophical or theological with discussions. Again, if you want to say use this and say, yeah, I don't have a belief in God, go ahead. I will still use this. You know, I'll say well, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. But if I'm discussing if someone asks, but if I'm discussing the existence of God, then I will use this one. And you know what? I think before I got put onto this, I would have used this one. But I would have used this one. I've just now understand how I'm using these words and can use them better. And I'm hoping that I can help you use them better. And knowing this should improve your arguments if you're arguing. If you're not arguing the existence of God, then honestly, I don't care if you use this one. But if you're like Godless Engineer or Aron, and you are arguing the existence of God with lack of belief being the definition of atheism, then you're wrong and stop doing it. It's dishonest and it's hypocritical, and you're applying double standards by not going to this but going to sure, but going to this. I probably should have just not put it on. If you're going to this, for people who are HIV denialists, um, but you're not going to this for philosophical subjects, then you're a hypocrite, you're dishonest, and you're no better than Ken Ham. That's it for this one. Have a good one, eh?